The point of the mechanism in this video is that I want to be able to retune very quickly between different scales which have frets for 2 octaves. So I want to retune both, for example, the fret for the 3rd. I want to retune both the frets for the 3rd, the one in the lower octave and the one in the higher octave, exactly to be an octave apart really quickly, so that I can change from one scale to another really quickly, but be really accurate about it. This is a test rig for the mechanism of a microtonal adjustable plucked dulcimer. At the moment we've only got 2 frets on it. It's supposed to have 7 frets an octave, 2 of them fixed, which are the perfect fifth and the octave frets, or tonic fret if you want to call the octave fret that, and 5 that move, 3 that would be between the tonic and the perfect fifth, and 2 that would be between the perfect fifth and the tonic going upwards. These frets are for the 7th, which is the hardest one to get right, which is the point of doing this test. At the moment I've tried to tune them. You see, that's the tonic, which is apparently C in standard tuning. So this here is the 7th, which is supposed to be B half flat. This is the 7th an octave up. I don't know if you can actually see much on the tuner, but that's pretty much what it says. Though with plucked strings, the pitch always goes down. It starts high when you pluck it, and it gradually goes down, which makes tuning any kind of plucked string a bit weird. Having said that, there's probably a way you can fix that, but I don't want to get into that discussion just now. Anyway, so the point of this little mechanism that works by, well, I was going to say by leverage, but that isn't quite the right description. But basically, these aluminium rods, the distance from that pivot to this pivot here, the pivot that's connected to the bit of wood with the lower fret, is twice the distance from this pivot to that pivot, the pivot that's connected to the higher fret. So basically, the higher fret should move half as far as the lower fret does. You've got this little bit here to get the intonation right, so the 2 frets are an octave apart. If you don't want them an octave apart, you can put them to a different interval, if you like that kind of thing. You could instead do tritives or something weird like that. You might even be able to do more octaves, though it would get a bit complicated. The point of setting this up for the 7th is it's the highest mobile fret, which means that it's the fret for which the smallest amount of motion produces the greatest change in pitch, which means it's the hardest fret to get right. So, I don't know if you can see this tuner, but when it goes green in the middle, it's supposed to be in tune, though there's always the problem of being a plucked string. It's actually double strings, a double chords, as you say. So it's 2 plucked strings, but being plucked, it starts high and goes low, which makes tuning anything a nightmare, really. But you have to deal with that if you're dealing with plucked strings. So, the idea is that this fret, the 7th, the fret for the 7th, and the fret for the 6th would move up and down between the fret for the 5th and the fret for the octave. So, if we can do this, first, I hope you can see the tuner. This tuner, if you can see it, When the notes are in tune, there should be a green dot in the middle of the screen. It's actually got a tiny smiley face on it when it's in tune, but you probably can't see that. Let's take it up to the octave. There we go, and now down the semitone. And again. And again. Oh, that's saying it's a bit low. Oh, it's because it's low there as well. Try it again. Better. And then. And finally to the fifth. Top fret seems slightly low there, slightly lower than it should be. You can adjust this more. You could even change the ratio between how much one fret moves when compared with the other fret moves. If you change the distances, you could make that adjustable if you wanted. You're basically using linear mechanics based on linear mathematics to approximate something that's non-linear, which generally works well. It shouldn't really need to go all the way between the fifth and the octave. A seventh shouldn't really need to do that. I just think it's really cool if it can. At the moment I'm using stainless steel bolts as frets, which just because it's easy, partly. I could have cut frets and put them on and all that kind of thing, but it would have taken longer, and I think this will give more sustain, which might otherwise be an issue on an instrument that has all this kind of messed about mechanics. 5 mobile notes, so that's 5 of these mechanisms. The idea is to put 3 on this side and 2 on the other side. It makes it a relatively large instrument, and it would be better to make it smaller, but the smaller you make this mechanism, the more accurately you have to make it to give the same accuracy of pitch, and there's other issues to do with how the frets will move more in this direction when you move the mechanism if these dimensions are smaller, but I can work that out. There's another way to do it, which would, well, there's loads of ways to do it. The other one I was particularly thinking of was involving pulleys, but that means putting loads of stuff under tension, and that compresses the instrument, and that seems to be annoying. It seems like it's going to make it harder to make, basically. So this thing, woo, 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 yeah. Oh, that's not quite going. There, that's better. It's supposed to be held together a bit better than this. This is just the test rig. Right, okay, so having tested most of it, I think the next thing is to do a test by ear. Oh, sorry, one more thing. This mechanism, really, it should be adjusted and then locked down in position, in theory, but there's another thing you could do with it, which is you could set it up so that there's springs controlling this, and when you move this to set the pitch, this adjusts the spring mechanism so that it will stay where you put it. Then you screw down or bolt down, whatever, the spring mechanism, and then what happens is that if you want to bend the pitch, you can and when you let go, the spring mechanism would take it back to wherever you set it. That would be wonderful, but that's much more complicated, so I'm not going to do that yet. It's time now for the test of how it would actually be played. So, it's normally played with a strumming motion, and then you find this. So that's your fifth. That's the minor sixth. Major seventh. Octave. It's not really set up for the frets to be played with the other strings, because I haven't set up the intonation correctly at the bridge or at the nut. But in theory you could do that and it wouldn't be an issue. You probably want the strings, the courses, slightly closer together. The tuning, you see, this is that's your lowest drone, the tonic. Then we have the perfect fifth, and then the octave, which is the lowest note on the melody string. You could tune it differently. You could go for a perfect fourth for the middle string, or 11/8, or 7/5, or whatever you liked within reason. There are ways to make an instrument so you can change the strings, replace one gauge with another gauge without reducing the tension. But I'm probably not going to do that on this, because I just like this. I like that sound. Someone actually gave me a Plucked Dulcimer, which I love the sound of the open strings on, but unfortunately it's in 12 equal pitch divisions of the octave, which to me isn't much fun. Which is why I want to build this, so I can have cool intervals like 11/8 or 7/4 or 12/11 or exactly 5/4 instead of the slightly sharp tempered version. Obviously you're not really supposed to play it like that, although you can. It's supposed to have loads more frets. And then, yeah, it'd be nice, but I hopefully will get round to building this completely soon. I've got pretty much all the bits I need, I think. And it's just building all these little bits, making sure they don't clash with each other, and making sure they function properly. Oh, one more thing. As well as the plucked strings going down in pitch, you know, when you pluck them, they go down as they ring. There's also the issue that if you play a string, you can bend the pitch, either pushing down or to the side. Now that means that you can correct for defects in the tuning by ear to some extent, but if you don't know the pitches you're trying to play by ear, and you've just set the frets up to be perfect for an interval you're not particularly familiar with, you can accidentally bend it to a different interval that sounds right to you but isn't the one that you're actually trying to find. But just pressing down lightly should mostly get round that problem.